This is the Gordie Howe International Bridge. It's a 1.6-mile long bridge nearing the end of construction and will be one of the most expensive bridges ever built. The mega project will connect two major cities across the border of Canada and the US and will help facilitate billions of dollars of additional trade and travel. But not everyone is a fan. A billionaire worked for over 10 years to try and shut it down. Why did he do this, and what makes this bridge so different? Let's take a closer look at one of the most exciting infrastructure projects of the century. The passage between Detroit, Michigan and Windsor, Canada is extremely important and has been for quite a while. What was once a popular crossing during the Civil War now accounts for a major trade route between Canada and the US. If Canada's two largest cities, Toronto and Montreal, want to pursue ground trade with certain US states, it makes the most sense to cross the border in Detroit. Connecting Detroit to Windsor are three main bridges and tunnels. The first is the Michigan Central Railway Tunnel, which was built in 1910. The second is the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel. Constructed in 1930, this tunnel accommodates vehicle traffic, with a major caveat that trucks are not allowed to use this, meaning that all of this commercial traffic must flow back and forth over the border using the third and final option called the Ambassador Bridge. Because of these factors and its location, this bridge is the busiest crossing of the entire US-Canada border, facilitating around 25% of all trucks that cross the border. And this privately owned bridge has been criticized over the last few decades for existing as a monopoly, bringing in the idea for a new major bridge. In 2004, the US and Canada jointly announced plans for a new border crossing between Detroit and Windsor, leading to the formation of a binational committee to oversee the project. And in 2009, the Ohio State Senate passed a resolution supporting the crossing, citing Canada as Ohio's largest foreign trade partner at around $36 billion per year. In 2010, the Michigan Senate delayed approval of bridge-related legislation, citing withheld revenue forecasts from the director of the Michigan Department of Transportation. Former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder expressed support for the bridge in 2011, leveraging Canadian funds to secure $2.2 billion from the Federal Highway Administration. Amidst political tensions, an agreement was finally reached in June 2012 between Canada's Prime Minister and Michigan's Governor, enabling the project to proceed with Canadian funding. Canada planned to fund bridge construction, land acquisition in Michigan, and the construction of Interstate 75 on-ramps. The Canadian contribution would be repaid from bridge tolls collected on the Canadian side, and no tolls would be charged on the US side. On April 12, 2013, the U.S. Department of State granted Michigan the permit required to build the bridge, and in May 2014, the U.S. Coast Guard issued the final federal approval needed. The Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, a Canadian federal crown corporation, commenced coordination of the bridge's construction and management in July 2014. Canada also committed to fund the construction of a customs plaza on the U.S. side in February 2015. Shortly after, the bridge was officially named the Gordie Howe International Bridge after the Canadian hockey player who played 25 years in the NHL with the Detroit Red Wings. In January 2016, it was reported due to exchange rates and increased inflation, costs could rise up to 4.8 billion Canadian dollars. And in case you're curious, as of 2024, it's estimated that the bridge will cost 6.4 billion Canadian dollars, or about 4.7 billion American dollars. The cable-stayed bridge, designed by the chief bridge architect of AECOM, features two large A-shaped bridge towers, each standing at 220 meters or 722 feet on the opposite banks of the Detroit River. Supported by 216 stay cables, the bridge boasts the longest main span of any cable-stayed bridge in North America at 853 meters or 2,800 feet. The total length of the bridge is 2.5 kilometers or 1.6 miles and has a height above the water of 46 meters or 151 feet. It will offer 6 lanes for automotive traffic and a dedicated bicycle and walking path, and will be on average around 123 feet or 38 meters wide. With soft glacial till running approximately 100 feet in the ground before hitting bedrock, the bridge relies on 10-foot diameter drilled shafts for support. Each tower's leg features 6 shafts, while the side spans and anchor piers are supported by 1 shaft each. Notably, there were differing construction techniques between the US and Canadian sides, including variations in casing installation methods skids and shaft designs. These towers not only pay homage to the late Gordie Howe by loosely resembling an upside-down hockey stick, but also facilitate maintenance access, enabling unrestricted movement for under-bridge gantries. The stay cables, anchored at intervals along the towers, incorporate circumferential rings along the stay sheath to limit the size of ice pieces that may break loose during melting. Durability, though, seems to be the #1 priority, aiming for a 125-year service life with a comprehensive approach to materials and construction. Low permeability concrete and stainless steel reinforcement in critical areas contribute to the bridge's longevity. Moreover, the bridge's dual design adheres to both US and Canadian standards, requiring professional seals from both Michigan and Ontario. The project encompasses special loading conditions, including seismic considerations and vessel collision scenarios. The vessel collision considers a 63,000 deadweight ton vessel impacting the seawalls at riverbanks with a 10.4 knot velocity. And for anyone curious, the cargo ship that collided with the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore was around 95,000 tons moving at 8 knots. On the US side, the port of entry will span 170 acres, featuring border inspection facilities and direct access to I-75 via specialized highway ramps. Conversely, the Canadian counterpart will cover 130 acres, housing border inspection, toll collection, and bridge maintenance facilities, all connecting to Ontario Highway 401. Construction commenced on July 17, 2018, marked by a groundbreaking ceremony led by the Canadian Minister of Infrastructure and the Michigan Governor. Originally slated for completion by the end of 2024, preparatory work continued in 2019, including land decontamination efforts, alongside political maneuvers to secure funding and community benefits totaling $20 million for local residents along the Detroit River. In 2020, the unveiling of pedestrian bridge designs over Interstate 75 signaled the project's progress, coinciding with the commencement of foundation work for the bridge towers. However, the COVID-19 pandemic introduced challenges, prompting adjustments to construction protocols, travel restrictions, and material procurement. By January 2021, foundation work for the towers was finalized and construction of the bridge tower structures began. Subsequently, in March 2021, attention shifted to the construction of buildings within the Canadian port of entry. As of March 2022, bridge segments on both sides of the Detroit River completed, with road deck construction well underway. Despite the pandemic setbacks, over 153 meters of the towers were completed by November 2022, and by May 2023, the installation of the cables finally commenced. August 2023 witnessed the US tower reaching its final height, followed by the completion of the Canadian counterpart in December. In October 2023, the WDBA forecasted the conclusion of major construction by the end of 2024, with additional installations such as signage and lighting requiring another 6 months. At its peak, approximately 2,300 workers were engaged in construction activities. And officially, in January 2024, the completion of the bridge deck was announced to be on schedule for the end of the year, ensuring progress toward the bridge's impending opening in fall 2025. The primary opposition to the construction of the new crossing came from Manuel "Matty" Moroun, an American billionaire who owned the previously mentioned Ambassador Bridge. Moroun actively sued the governments of Canada and Michigan to halt the project and proposed building a second span of the Ambassador Bridge, which he would have owned instead. Critics suggested that Moroun's resistance stemmed from potential losses in profits from duty-free gasoline sales, which, despite being exempt from around 60 cents per gallon in taxes, only resulted in a marginal reduction in consumer pump prices. And even outside of this, Moroun's ownership of the Ambassador Bridge caused quite a bit of controversy. The Canadian Transit Company, part of Moroun's ownership of the Ambassador Bridge, launched advertisements against the new proposal in July 2011, labeling it as a $2.2 billion road to nowhere. In 2012, Moroun invested over $30 million in promoting a proposed constitutional amendment in Michigan, seeking approval from both Detroit and statewide voters for bridge construction. Then, in 2018, Moroun's company aired television ads urging President Donald Trump to cancel the project. But Trump signed the first US funding for the bridge's Customs and Border Protection into law in late 2019. Despite Moroun's continued legal battles, the Michigan Court of Appeals ruled against his attempts to stop activity on the Michigan side of the river in May 2018, allowing bridge construction to proceed. Following Moroun's passing in July 2020, his family maintained ownership of the Ambassador Bridge and later sought damages for property acquisitions made through eminent domain for bridge construction. And with all this being said, it's still imperative to recognize how important of a role the Ambassador Bridge has played in facilitating traffic over the border for the last century. Outside of kickback from Moroun, in all of my research, I wasn't able to dig up too many negatives about the bridge. This major infrastructure project will help businesses and travelers by adding another option for crossing the Detroit River that's more efficient and optimized than others. On top of this, it's anticipated that a surge in border traffic will increase from 18,500 vehicles a day to 26,500 vehicles by 2025. As an engineer, the bridge's design and construction are pretty amazing, and it's always a positive to see investment in infrastructure in an age when it often gets looked over. I want to thank you for watching the video and ask that you please check out some of my other content. This video especially was a lot of fun to make, and I like that I get a chance to learn so much throughout the process of creation. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.